You keep breathing like you belong here, kid, and I'll write the reason you don't. The sentence landed before the hand did. Officer Blake Turner stood close enough for Isaiah Brooks to smell the mint gum on his breath and the stale coffee under it. The parking lot lamps above Harbour Pines flickered against the wet asphalt, turning every puddle into a broken mirror. Behind Isaiah, Building C sat quiet, its balconies lined with folded chairs, dead plants, and people pretending not to watch. Blake's right hand rested on the top of Isaiah's car. His left hand hovered near Isaiah's jacket pocket, not touching yet, just close enough to make the threat feel practiced. Isaiah did not step back. He did not raise his voice. He kept both hands visible, fingers relaxed, palms angled toward the light. If this story pulls you in, like and subscribe. The woman who had called it in stood near the leasing office door, arms crossed tight against a cream blazer. Amber Whitmore had the fixed smile of someone who believed a locked gate made her more important than the people outside it. She had already told the first officer that Isaiah was not one of theirs, and when she said it, she had not meant the building. A dispatcher's summary would later read like this. At 8:46 p.m., caller reports unknown black male near Building C, possibly checking vehicles, no weapon seen, caller refuses direct contact, dispatch ID, Harbour 761. That was the first receipt. Not the loudest one, not the one that would turn faces pale in a hearing room months later. Just a flat line of words, carried through a radio, turning a man standing beside his own car into a problem with a location. Blake tapped the roof twice. "You got ID, kid?" Isaiah looked at the hand, then at Blake's face. "Am I being detained, or are you asking?" A small laugh moved through Blake's nose. He turned just slightly, enough for his shoulder camera to face the empty lot instead of Isaiah's hands. "Listen to him," Blake said, glancing at his partner. "He watches videos." Officer Carter Knox stood near the rear bumper, thinner, neater, quieter. He was the kind of man who seemed built out of report language. His uniform had no wrinkles. His hair looked cut with a ruler. He did not smirk like Blake. That made him more dangerous because he looked like he could turn any lie into a sentence that survived review. Amber stepped closer. "I told them you were lingering. This is private property." Isaiah's keys sat on the trunk beside a folded receipt from the grocery store. 2 paper bags were inside the car. One had oranges, rice, and a carton of eggs. The other had batteries and a cheap flashlight for Mrs. Naomi Ellis in Building C, who had called him earlier because her hallway light kept failing and maintenance had ignored her again. He could have said all of that. Instead, he asked one clean question. "Who authorized you to order me off the property?" Amber's face tightened. Blake's smile widened. "You hear that, Carter? He wants paperwork." Carter wrote something on a small pad without looking up. Subject is refusing to explain presence. Isaiah turned his eyes toward Carter. "That is not what happened." Blake moved then, not fast enough to look like panic, not slow enough to look harmless. His hand pressed against Isaiah's chest, then slid toward the left side of Isaiah's jacket. "Hands on the car." Isaiah complied before the command finished. Both palms on the roof, no sudden motion, no twist, no invitation for Blake to turn fear into force. The lot became still. In that strange way, public spaces become still, when everyone knows something wrong is happening and everyone is waiting to see who will pay for noticing. Blake patted the outside of Isaiah's jacket. He moved past the right pocket. He moved past the waistband. Then his fingers paused at the left pocket, and Isaiah felt the officer's wrist angle inward. Carter's pen stopped. Blake pulled out a small, clear bag. Amber sucked in a breath too perfectly timed to be surprised. "Well," Blake said softly, "look what the kid brought to our family community."
Isaiah did not look at the bag.
He looked at Blake's hand, then at Carter's pad, then at the leasing office camera above the door. The camera's little red light blinked once, then stayed steady. The evidence bag came out later, fresh and glossy, with a seal strip already creased along one edge. Blake held it up like a trophy. "You want to keep asking questions?" Isaiah finally lowered his eyes to the seal. The printed evidence seal number on that strip had already appeared in a property room access log 1 hour before Blake claimed he found the drugs. And that was the first crack in their story. Isaiah Brooks lived 3 streets from Harbor Pines, in a small duplex with a loose mailbox, a sun-faded porch, and a back door that stuck when the weather turned damp. He liked routines, not because routines made life safe, but because they proved when safety had been disturbed. Every morning, before he left, he placed 3 things on the little table by the door. Keys on the left, folded cash in the center, phone on the right. If he bought something, he saved the receipt. If someone gave him a name, he wrote it down. If a door was locked when it should be open, he noticed which hinge complained. People mistook that for quietness. They also mistook quietness for permission. The first time Amber Whitmore noticed him, Isaiah had been helping Naomi Ellis carry a box of canned goods from the delivery bench to Building C. Naomi was 74, sharp-tongued when tired, and too proud to ask the office for help more than once. She had known Isaiah since he was a teenager, back when he delivered prescriptions for a pharmacy that no longer existed. To Naomi, he was the young man who fixed her window screen, found her lost insurance card, and never accepted more than a glass of water. To Amber, he was a man without a leasing badge standing near a gate. Her heels clicked across the walkway as if each step were part of an inspection. "Can I help you?" Naomi answered first, because she knew that tone. "He is helping me." Amber's smile did not move. "We ask that non-residents check in at the office." Isaiah shifted the box higher against his hip. "I signed the visitor sheet." Amber's eyes flicked to the grocery box, then to his shoes, then to the old sedan parked along the curb. "The office staff didn't mention you." Naomi let out a dry little breath. "Maybe the office staff should answer the phone." Isaiah carried the box the rest of the way without adding a word. That was the first rule he kept for himself in places where people were ready to misunderstand him. Give them fewer sounds to edit later. But silence did not protect him. It only changed the shape of the attack. By the next week, he had become a subject in the Harbor Pines resident group chat. He did not belong to the chat, but Naomi's niece sent her screenshots, and Naomi, angry enough to tremble, read them aloud over her kitchen table. Amber had written that management was aware of a recurring outside male presence. Someone named Gwen from Building A said he had looked into parked cars. Another resident corrected her and said he had been checking a tire because Naomi's neighbor had a flat. Amber responded that residents should trust their instincts. That phrase worked like a match. Trust your instincts. It allowed fear to dress itself as wisdom. It allowed prejudice to sound like caution. It allowed a woman with a clipboard to make a neighborhood feel hunted by a man carrying groceries. Isaiah listened while Naomi read. His face stayed level, but his right thumb pressed once against the edge of his glass. "You should complain," Naomi said. "To whom?" "To Amber, to the owner, to somebody." Isaiah looked at the hallway light blinking beyond her half-open door. It had been flickering for weeks. The carpets smelled faintly of damp concrete. Somewhere below them, a dryer buzzed and buzzed, because no one had come to empty it. "I'll start with the light," he said. Naomi stared at him. "That is not what I meant." "I know." That evening, he went to the leasing office and asked for the maintenance request log. The young man at the desk, Ronan Hayes, froze for half a second before offering the kind of smile people use when they are closing a drawer in their mind. "Residents can request copies," Ronan said. "Guests cannot." Isaiah did not argue. He asked for a blank guest pass policy instead. Ronan tapped the keyboard. "Printers down. It printed a move-in packet behind you 2 minutes ago." Ronan's jaw tightened. Amber appeared from the back office, smelling like expensive lotion and impatience. "Mr. Brooks, right?" He had never given her his last name. "Yes. We appreciate neighbors helping neighbors, but we have had concerns." "Who is we?" "The community." "That is broad." Amber's eyes hardened, but her voice stayed sweet. "This is a private residence. You cannot just wander in because someone elderly lets you." Isaiah let the word elderly pass without touching it. Naomi would have burned the room down over that word, but Isaiah had learned the value of not picking up every blade thrown at his feet. "I came to ask for the written guest policy," he said. "And I told you," Ronan added quickly, "the printer is down." Isaiah looked at the copier behind him. A green light glowed under the screen. "Then email it." Amber stepped between them, a small movement with a large meaning. "I think we're done here." The phrase would matter later because it was not an order to leave. It was not a trespass warning. It was not a lawful notice. It was a manager ending a conversation while pretending she had created a boundary. At the time, it only meant Isaiah walked out with nothing in his hands except the time, the names, and the exact words. 2 days later, Carter Knox wrote him into a report. Not officially, not yet. The report was attached to a community contact note, the kind of document that looked too minor to fight and too permanent to ignore. Subject observed near Building C. Subject questioned by management. Subject refused to explain presence. Subject departed after becoming argumentative. 4 sentences. No bruises, no handcuffs, no crime. Still, those 4 sentences did quiet violence. They turned help into suspicion. They turned a question into defiance. They built the first rung of a ladder others could climb later and say, "See, there was history." Isaiah saw the note because Naomi's nephew worked part-time in municipal records and knew when language felt planted. He did not break rules for Isaiah. He did not leak sealed files. He simply told Naomi that a public incident summary existed, and Naomi, who had lived long enough to know when paper was being sharpened, demanded a copy through the proper channel. When she handed it to Isaiah, her fingers were stiff. "They wrote you like a stray dog." Isaiah read it once, then again. He placed it on the table beside the grocery receipt from that day and aligned the corners. Naomi noticed. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Make little piles, like the world has to answer to them." For the first time that evening, Isaiah almost smiled. Sometimes it does. But the world did not answer quickly. It stalled. It misplaced. It redirected. Amber stopped speaking to Isaiah directly unless someone else stood nearby. Ronan watched him through the office window. Carter drove slowly past the duplex one afternoon, not stopping, not speaking, just letting the patrol car roll by at walking speed while Isaiah trimmed the hedge. Blake Turner appeared only in other people's stories at first, a broad-shouldered officer who liked to lean into car windows, who called grown men son, who once made a teenager empty his backpack on a sidewalk because someone had said the kid looked too comfortable near a bike rack. Blake had a voice people remembered. He did not yell unless he needed a witness to remember fear instead of words. Most of the time, he spoke softly. He put a hook in every sentence and waited for the other person to pull against it. Isaiah understood men like that. They were not reckless. Reckless men made obvious mistakes. Blake made careful ones. He used body placement, not threats. He used jokes that could be denied. He let others supply the ugliest parts and then acted like he was only responding to concern. So, when Isaiah returned to Harbour Pines that Thursday night, with batteries for Naomi's flashlight and a carton of eggs she had insisted were cheaper at his grocery store, he noted everything before he got out of the car. The visitor spaces were half empty. The east gate was propped open with a landscaping brick. The leasing office light was on after posted hours. A white pickup truck sat by the maintenance shed with its tailgate down. Building C's hallway light flickered twice, then went dark. He placed his phone in his right pocket, receipt in his wallet, keys on the trunk while he lifted the groceries. The habit was automatic. Keys on a flat surface, hands clear, nothing loose. He had taken 3 steps when Amber came out of the office and stood under the awning. "Mr. Brooks." Her tone had changed. Not louder, more prepared. Isaiah paused. "Ms. Whitmore, I need you to stay right there. Is there a problem?" "There has been complaints." "About what?" "About you." That was when the patrol car entered without lights. It rolled through the open gate slowly, as if it had already known where to stop. Blake Turner stepped out first. Carter Knox followed with his small pad already in hand. Blake looked Isaiah up and down, taking his time. "You lost, kid?" Isaiah had been called many things by men who wanted him smaller. Kid was one of the cleaner ones. That did not make it harmless. In Blake's mouth, it was not about age. It was a leash word. "No," Isaiah said. Blake pointed toward the grocery bag. "That yours?" "Yes." "You got a receipt?" Isaiah heard Amber shift behind him. He heard Carter's pen click open. "For groceries?" "For whatever you're carrying around my scene." Isaiah glanced once at the patrol car, then at the open gate. "What scene?" Blake smiled. "That depends on you." The exchange would later sound minor to people who believed danger announced itself with shouting. It did not. Sometimes danger wore a calm voice and asked questions it did not need answered. Carter moved to the side, angling his body so Isaiah would have to turn away from Blake to watch him. Amber remained behind the office column, close enough to hear, far enough to claim she had not interfered. Blake asked for ID. Isaiah asked whether he was being detained. Blake did not answer. Carter wrote. That was how the line got crossed. Not with a dramatic shove, not at first. It began with a missing answer. A question that should have been simple became a gap large enough to drag a man through. When Isaiah repeated, "Am I free to leave?" Blake's face lost its smile. "You keep talking like that, we're going to have a different night." Isaiah kept his hands where they could be seen. "I'm asking for the basis of the stop."
Blake stepped closer.
"Basis is a manager called about trespass. Basis is you don't live here. Basis is I'm tired of repeating myself to someone who thinks big words make him taller." Amber's mouth twitched. Carter did not look up. The word trespass came out like a key they had found before they found the lock. Isaiah said, "Has an authorized person personally ordered me to leave?" Blake's eyes narrowed. It was a small sentence, built from ordinary words, but Carter heard it differently. His pen paused again. Amber looked at him, just for a fraction of a second, as if checking whether that mattered.
It did matter.
Not because Isaiah was reciting law like a courtroom hero. He was not. He did not say a statute number. He did not lecture. He asked about the missing piece in the story they were trying to build. Trespass required more than dislike dressed as property management. It required a boundary made clear, an entry or remaining without authorization, and in many situations like theirs, an actual notice or order that could be documented. Blake stepped into the space between those words and the record. Hands on the car. For what reason? Officer safety. The phrase did a lot of work. It always did. It took a man standing still and made him sound like a threat. It turned compliance into proof that command had been needed. Isaiah placed his hands on the roof.
Blake patted him down.
The first pass was fast. The second was slower. Carter stood behind Isaiah's left shoulder now. Amber was no longer by the office door. She had moved closer to the trash enclosure, where the shadow from the fence cut across her face. Nothing sharp, Blake said. Isaiah stayed silent. Blake leaned nearer. You nervous, kid? No. You should be. Then the left hand moved. Isaiah felt the pressure at his jacket pocket before the bag appeared. He felt the slight inward push, the brush of knuckles, the pause that lasted one beat too long. When Blake lifted the clear bag between two fingers, Carter's eyes went to Blake's face first, not the bag. That told Isaiah something. Surprise looks at the object. Coordination looks at the actor. Amber covered her mouth. Oh my, she whispered.
It was too clean.
The timing, the breath, the distance she had chosen. Even fear has texture when it is real. Hers had rehearsal in it. Blake turned the bag toward the light. Possession, maybe intent, depending on what else we find. Isaiah looked straight ahead. That did not come from my pocket. Blake leaned in, voice low enough that the body camera might catch tone, but not every word. You better hope the camera likes you more than I do.
Carter finally spoke.
Subject claims item was planted. Isaiah turned his head slightly. I did not use that word. Carter wrote anyway. Those 5 words would later sit in the report like a trap. Subject claims item was planted. It made him sound defensive before an accusation had even been entered. It made the truth look like a strategy.
Blake cuffed him.
Tight enough to mark, not enough to photograph cleanly. Carter gathered the grocery bags as if they might contain more evidence, but he did not log them on scene. Amber said she wanted him banned from Harbor Pines. Blake told her they would handle the paperwork. Handle. That was the word Isaiah kept. At the station, they put him in a holding room that smelled of floor cleaner and old air. A metal bench ran along one wall. A camera sat in the corner, black dome, no visible light. Blake came in once, without Carter, and leaned against the door. You're quiet now. Isaiah kept his eyes on the table. Smart, Blake said. Maybe you can learn. You don't come into places like Harbor Pines and start asking managers for documents. People get the wrong idea. Am I being questioned?
Blake stared.
Isaiah added, I want to know whether I'm free to remain silent. The smile returned, thinner this time. You really do watch videos. Blake left without reading rights because he was careful enough to know when not to ask custodial questions on record. Later, in his report, he would not mention the holding room conversation at all. Carter's report came 6 hours later. It stated that Isaiah had been observed loitering near vehicles, that management had previously warned him about unauthorized presence, that he became evasive when asked for identification, that Blake conducted a pat-down for officer safety, and that a small bag containing suspected narcotics was recovered from Isaiah's left jacket pocket. The report did not say Amber had never given a clear order to leave. It did not say the east gate was propped open. It did not say the grocery receipt showed Isaiah had bought eggs and batteries 12 minutes before arriving. It did not say Blake's first pat-down found nothing. It did not say Carter wrote, "Claims item was planted," after Isaiah used different words. It did not say Ronan Hayes opened the maintenance shed 6 minutes before the patrol car arrived. The report did what reports can do when written by someone who understands the power of a mission. It built a room with no windows and invited everyone else to live inside it. Isaiah was released before dawn after a notice to appear and a property receipt for his wallet, phone, keys, and belt. The grocery bags were not returned. No one explained why. Outside, the sky had begun to pale over the municipal lot. Naomi's nephew, Kelvin Ellis, waited in a grey sedan with coffee in the cup holder and anger all over his face. "You want to tell me what happened?" Isaiah got in slowly. His wrists hurt. He folded the property receipt and placed it inside his wallet. "Not yet." Kelvin pulled away from the curb. "You always say that when it is worse than you want people to know." Isaiah looked out the window at the courthouse annex, still dark except for one maintenance light. "Then you already know enough." For half a mile, neither man spoke. The quiet helped Isaiah sort the night into pieces. Amber's position near the office. Carter's pen stopping twice. Blake's shoulder turn. The bag seal. Ronan's truck. The east gate. The phrase, "handle the paperwork." Each detail went into place, not because he knew what the whole structure was yet, but because loose things become evidence only when someone keeps them from floating away. By 7:35 a.m., Naomi had called him 6 times. At 8, she opened her door before he knocked. Her eyes went to his wrists. "Sit down. I need to fix your light. You need to sit down." He sat. Naomi placed a towel-wrapped ice pack on the table. "Do not insult me by pretending those cuffs were comfortable." He put his wrists on the towel. She looked at the marks and made a sound low in her throat. Not a sob, not quite a curse, because Naomi did not waste language when rage was available. "They planted it." Isaiah did not answer immediately. She leaned closer. "Tell me I am wrong." "You are not wrong." The words changed the room. Naomi sat back as if the chair had shifted under her. She had expected fear. She had expected denial. She had not expected confirmation delivered that calmly. "What are you going to do?" "The same thing they did." Naomi frowned. "Paperwork," he said. That answer disappointed her at first. She wanted thunder. Most people did, after watching someone be degraded. They wanted a moment big enough to balance the injury. But systems rarely fear thunder. They wait for it to pass. Paper remained. Paper traveled. Paper contradicted. Paper made people choose between signing a lie and admitting one. Isaiah began with the simplest document, the visitor log. Harbour Pines kept a sign-in tablet at the leasing office, but the old paper binder sat beneath it for deliveries and overflow entries. Isaiah had signed it the week before. He had signed it again the night of the arrest because the tablet screen had frozen. He remembered the pen, blue ink, cracked cap, attached to the binder with fraying string. When Naomi called the office to request a copy, Ronan told her the binder was unavailable because management was updating records. Naomi asked what that meant. Ronan said, "It means records are being updated." Then he hung up. Isaiah wrote that down. At 10:19 a.m., Amber sent an email to residents of Building C. The subject line read, "Safety reminder regarding unauthorized visitors." The message thanked residents for reporting suspicious activity, reminded them that Harbour Pines was private property and said management was cooperating with law enforcement after an incident involving a non-resident found with illegal substances. It did not name Isaiah. It did not have to. The building knew. By noon, Isaiah's part-time employer had received an anonymous message through its public website. The message said an employee named Isaiah Brooks had been arrested for drugs at an apartment complex, and that parents should know who was handling delivery routes near families. His supervisor, a woman named Fiona Avery, called him into a small office behind the supply room. Fiona was fair, in the exhausted way overworked people become fair. She did not assume innocence because it was noble, and she did not assume guilt because it was easy. She closed the door and folded her hands. "I got something ugly this morning." "I know." "You know what it says?" "I can guess." She watched him. "Are you able to tell me there is no safety issue with you working routes?" "Yes." "That is not the same as telling me what happened." "I understand." Fiona looked down at the printed message. "It says you were found with narcotics." "That is what the report will say." "And what do you say?" Isaiah met her eyes. "I say that report will have problems." For a moment, Fiona said nothing. Then she nodded once, as if he had given her less than she wanted, but more than a lie. "I am putting you on 2 days unpaid leave while I review policy. I do not like doing it. I also cannot ignore a public allegation." "I understand." "I said review," she added, "not fire." It was a small mercy. Small mercies still cost something. Isaiah thanked her and left by the back door to avoid the drivers gathering near the loading bay. He heard one whisper his name anyway. That was the professional layer. Not prison, not court, just the first, quiet removal. The first proof that an accusation does not need a conviction to start taking food from a table. Amber knew that. So did whoever sent the message. By late afternoon, Theo Bennett called. He introduced himself as a civil rights attorney, then immediately corrected the impression that he could fix anything fast. "I am not promising you a miracle. I have 3 hearings this week, 2 discovery fights, and 1 client who thinks a demand letter is a magic wand. But Mrs. Ellis says you are being set up, and Mrs. Ellis scares me enough to return calls." Isaiah stood on his porch, watching a dark sedan pass too slowly at the end of the block. "She has that effect. I need documents. Arrest paperwork, property receipt, any photos of your wrists, any proof of why you were there, and I need you not to post about it." "I do not post." "That is the first good news I have heard today." Theo paused, papers shifting in the background. "Were you questioned after arrest?" An officer entered the holding room and made comments. "Questions?" "Not directly." "Good for them. Bad for us. They know where the line is." Theo did not sound surprised. That was worse than outrage. Outrage can be naive. Theo sounded like a man sorting another familiar injury into the right drawer. "I am going to request the body camera footage, dispatch audio, CAD log, and any trespass warning on file. I also want the leasing office video if it still exists. It may not." "It exists." "How do you know?" "The light was on. The recording may still disappear." "I know." Theo exhaled. "Then we move before it does." But movement inside official channels did not look like movement from the outside. It looked like forms. It looked like waiting. It looked like a clerk saying requests took time. It looked like Amber sending another email about community vigilance. It looked like Carter Knox filing a supplemental report at 5:43 p.m., adding that Isaiah had assumed a bladed stance during the encounter. Isaiah read that phrase 3 times. a bladed stance. He had placed his hands on the car.
Carter knew the language.
A bladed stance suggested threat. Threat justified caution. Caution explained force. Force led back to officer safety. The circle closed neatly if no one could see what happened before the camera turned. That night, Isaiah returned to Harbour Pines, not through the gate, not into the lot, but to the public sidewalk across the street. He stood under a bus stop sign with his hood down and his hands in his coat pockets, watching the property from outside its fence. He was not there long before a maintenance cart rolled from behind Building C. Ronan Hayes drove it. He stopped near the trash enclosure, stepped out, and unlocked the side utility room, the same door near which Amber had stood the previous night. He carried a small cardboard box inside and came out without it. Isaiah wrote the time in a pocket notebook. 8:12 p.m. He did not follow. He did not trespass. He did not take a photo through a resident window or do anything that could be twisted into harassment. He stood where the city sidewalk allowed him to stand and watched public-facing movements on a property now accusing him of unlawful presence. From behind the fence, Ronan saw him. The maintenance worker froze. Isaiah gave no wave, no smile, no threat. He simply turned and walked away. By morning, a new rumor had entered the building. Isaiah was stalking staff. Amber did not write it herself this time. She let a resident named Crystal begin the thread, then replied with concern. Her words were careful. Management cannot discuss ongoing safety matters, but residents should remain aware of their surroundings and report any unusual behavior to law enforcement. She knew the value of distance. A direct accusation could be challenged. A concern could spread without fingerprints.
Naomi read the thread
And wanted to march downstairs. Isaiah stopped her at the door. No. You do not get to tell me no in my own apartment. You can be angry. You cannot become their witness. That made her pause. He softened his voice. If you confront Amber, the story becomes you and her arguing. Then they say I sent you. Naomi's hand tightened around the knob. So we do nothing? We do the boring thing? I hate the boring thing. I know. The boring thing began with a written maintenance complaint about the hallway light, signed by 3 residents. It continued with a preservation letter from Theo Bennett to Harbour Pines, instructing management to retain video, access logs, visitor records, emails, text messages, and maintenance entries related to Isaiah Brooks, Building C, and the night of the arrest. Theo did not accuse anyone of a crime in that letter. He used careful words. Potentially relevant, anticipated litigation, adverse inference, preservation obligation. The letter landed at Amber's office at 1:16 p.m. At 1:48 p.m., Ronan Hayes opened the office printer cabinet and removed the paper visitor binder. At 2:12 p.m., the leasing office camera stopped recording for system maintenance. That phrase would return later. For now, Isaiah only learned the camera was down because Naomi's neighbor, a retired bus mechanic named Jasper Cole, came upstairs with a folded notice in his hand. They put this by the mailboxes. The notice apologized for temporary interruption to exterior camera service due to scheduled maintenance. It was dated that same day. No prior notice, no vendor name, no schedule. Isaiah studied it, then asked Jasper when he saw it posted. After lunch. Wasn't there when I got mail at 11. Can I keep this? Jasper hesitated. You think it matters? Isaiah looked at the paper, then toward the hallway light that still had not been fixed. I think they hope it does not.
Jasper let him keep it.
The next escalation came from Deputy Heather Sloan. She was not part of Harbour Pines. She worked out of the county sheriff's office and had the tired authority of someone used to being called when city problems wanted a county shadow. She came to Isaiah's duplex in an unmarked vehicle 2 days after the arrest, introduced herself, and stood on the porch without asking to come in. "I am reviewing a complaint related to your allegation."
I filed a complaint about the arrest.
"And the evidence?" Her brow moved slightly. "The language in the complaint says evidence may have been introduced improperly." "That is accurate. It also says you deny possession." "I do." She glanced at her folder. "You understand how often people say that?" "I understand how often people rely on that sentence to stop listening." Heather's eyes rose.
There it was.
The first spark of something personal. Not anger exactly, a recalculation. She had expected defensiveness, maybe pleading, maybe a man eager to tell a long story. Isaiah gave her a mirror and made her look at her own assumption. "I am here to gather information," she said. "Then gather all of it." She looked past him into the living room. On the coffee table, documents sat in squared stacks. Arrest paperwork, property receipt, grocery receipt, Harbour Pines notice, complaint copy. Beside them were photographs of his wrists, printed on plain paper, time-stamped by the corner shop that handled passport photos. Heather noticed the arrangement. "You prepared." "I was harmed." "That is not what I meant." "I know."
She asked about the night.
Isaiah answered in short, precise sentences. He did not embellish. He did not call Blake corrupt. He did not say Amber was racist. He did not say Ronan planted anything. He described positions, times, words, movements. Each answer seemed to frustrate Heather more because it gave her less emotional fog to dismiss. When she asked why he had been at Harbour Pines, he showed Naomi's call log and the grocery receipt. When she asked whether he had permission to visit, he showed prior text messages from Naomi inviting him. When she asked whether he had been warned not to return, he showed the absence of any written warning and described Amber's phrase, "I think we're done here." Heather wrote that down. Then she asked the question that revealed where her mind had started. "Why would Officer Turner risk his career over you?" Isaiah looked at her for a long moment. "Because over you was the center of the sentence. Not over evidence, not over procedure, not over the truth. Over you, as if his life did not weigh enough to tempt misconduct, as if no one would risk anything unless the target were important by some measure she recognized." He answered carefully, "I do not know his risk calculation." Heather closed the folder. "That is a very specific way to put it." "It is an accurate way."
She stepped back from the door.
"I will request the camera footage." The leasing office camera went down after the preservation letter. That stopped her. "When?" 2:12 p.m., according to the posted notice. The notice appeared after 11 a.m. There was no vendor listed. Heather stared at him again. This time, she did not look skeptical. She looked annoyed in a different direction. "I will note that." Notes disappear when they are alone. Her mouth tightened. "Mr. Brooks, I am not your enemy. Then do not become their shortcut." For the first time, she had no immediate answer. After she left, Isaiah sat on the porch until the streetlights came on. The duplex across from him had a flag with faded edges. A boy rode a bicycle in small circles until his mother called him inside. The air smelled like cut grass and rain waiting offshore. For a few minutes, the world pretended to be ordinary. Then, a brick came through his side window. It did not hit him. It struck the kitchen floor, scattering glass across the tile. A piece of paper had been wrapped around it with rubber bands. Isaiah did not pick it up bare-handed. He photographed it where it landed, then used a plastic grocery bag to unfold the note. Stop making trouble. 3 words, block letters, no signature.
He called the non-emergency line.
Not 911, because the thrower was gone and no one was injured. The responding officer arrived 40 minutes later, took one look at Isaiah, and asked whether he had enemies. Isaiah almost laughed. Instead, he said, "I have an open complaint against officers involved in my arrest." The officer's pen slowed. "Against city officers?" "Yes. This is county." "I know." The officer wrote a report for property damage. He did not dust for prints. He did not canvass the block. He gave Isaiah a case card and told him to call if anything else happened. When the officer left, Isaiah swept the glass into a cardboard box and taped plastic over the window. He did it slowly because anger makes hands careless. He could not afford careless. The next morning, Carter Knox's supplemental report included a new line. Subject has demonstrated escalating grievance behavior toward Harbor Pines staff and law enforcement. Theo Bennett read it over the phone and went quiet. That phrase is not accidental. No. They are building a threat narrative. Yes. I need you to stay away from Harbor Pines. I can stay off the property. I said stay away. Naomi lives there.
Theo sighed.
I know. I also know how this gets written if they provoke another contact. You approach, they call. You question, they say aggression. You defend yourself, they say assault. That is the ladder. Isaiah looked at the taped window. They already climbed part of it. Then do not hand them the next rung.
He did not go to Harbor Pines that day.
He called Naomi instead. She was furious about the brick, furious about the hallway light, furious that everyone kept telling Isaiah to be careful when other people were the ones doing harm. They want you tired, she said. Yes. Are you? He looked at the stacks of paper on his table. The top page was Amber's resident email. Under it, Carter's report. Under that, the camera maintenance notice. The papers did not look dramatic. They looked thin. But together, they had weight. Not enough. For 2 days, nothing visible happened. That was the low point that did not feel like a low point because it was quiet. Fiona kept Isaiah off delivery routes while she reviewed policy. Naomi's hallway stayed dark. Amber's emails stopped, which meant she was speaking somewhere less visible. Theo filed requests and warned that agencies could delay. Heather did not call. Blake did not drive by. Carter did not add another report. The absence became its own pressure. Then, on the 3rd evening, Kelvin Ellis sent Isaiah a photograph. It showed the Harbor Pines maintenance shed from the sidewalk. The white pickup was there again. Ronan stood at the open tailgate with Carter Knox beside him. They were not touching. They were not exchanging anything obvious. Carter had one hand on the bed of the truck. Ronan had a folder tucked beneath his arm. Kelvin's message was short. Saw this while dropping Aunt Naomi's mail. Did not stop. Isaiah enlarged the photograph. The folder was blue. The visitor binder at Harbor Pines had a blue cover. He called Theo. Theo's first words were, "Please tell me you did not take that photo." "I did not." "Good. Send it." A pause. Then Theo added, "And Isaiah?" "Yes. Do not go there tonight." But the story had already moved without him. At 8:54 p.m., Naomi called, whispering, "There is someone in the hallway." Isaiah stood up. "Where are you?"
In my apartment.
"Door locked." "Do not open it." "I am old, not foolish." "What do you hear?" "2 men. One is Ronan. The other keeps telling him to hurry. There by the electrical closet. The hallway light had been the excuse from the beginning. The darkness they refused to fix had become useful. Isaiah told her to call the county line and report a possible maintenance break-in outside her unit. Then he called Kelvin, who lived 6 minutes away. Then he did something Theo would dislike, but not be able to call reckless. He drove to the public street outside Harbour Pines and stayed there. He arrived at 9:07 p.m. He parked under a streetlight across from the east gate. The gate was closed this time. The leasing office was dark. Building C's hallway glowed for half a second, then went black. A shape moved near the side exit. Ronan came out first, carrying nothing visible. Blake followed. That changed the air. Blake was off-duty, or dressed to look that way. Dark pants, plain jacket, no visible patrol car. Carter was not with him. Amber's office was dark, but Blake walked like a man who believed every space became his once he entered it. Isaiah did not cross the street. Blake saw him anyway. The officer stopped under the gate light and smiled. Then he walked toward the sidewalk. Isaiah started recording on his phone before Blake reached the curb. He kept the phone low, visible, not hidden.
Blake noticed.
You really do not learn. Isaiah stood beside his car. This is a public street. Blake looked up and down the block. Public street, private obsession. You following people now? No. You stalking that manager? No. You watching residents? No. Blake stepped closer. You got a lot of no in you for a man who keeps showing up where he is not wanted. Isaiah did not move. Mrs. Ellis reported men in the hallway near her unit.
Blake's smile flickered.
Mrs. Ellis should mind her business. She lives there, and you do not. The street was quiet. Too quiet. Isaiah saw Ronan behind the gate, half hidden near the keypad. Blake wanted Isaiah's eyes on him, not the gate. That was another small piece. A car turned the corner, headlights washing over them. For 2 seconds, everything was bright. In that light, Isaiah saw Blake's right hand close into a fist, then open again.
You think that phone saves you?
Blake asked. It records. It records what I let happen in front of it. Then Blake moved. He did not throw a punch. He was too careful for that. He stepped inside Isaiah's space and shoulder-checked him against the car, hard enough to knock the breath out of him, not hard enough to look like a strike from across the street. His hand shot toward Isaiah's wrist, aiming to twist the phone away. Isaiah pivoted with the pressure instead of against it. He turned his wrist downward, stepped back with his left foot, and let Blake's grip slide off the sleeve. It was simple, efficient, not flashy. A movement learned somewhere, but not named. Blake stumbled half a step because he had expected resistance in the wrong direction. The one clean second, the bully looked foolish. That was when his face changed. He lunged again, this time with anger breaking through the method. Isaiah raised his forearm, caught Blake's wrist, and redirected him into the side of the car without slamming him. Minimal force, enough space to breathe, enough control to avoid injury. Ronan shouted from behind the gate, "He attacked him!" Isaiah's phone lay on the ground, still recording, angled toward the tires. It did not show faces. It captured shoes, breath, the scrape of fabric, and Blake's voice. "You put hands on me, kid. That is your second mistake." Isaiah backed away with both hands up. "I am not fighting you." Blake's chest rose and fell. He looked toward Ronan, then at the phone, then back at Isaiah. The calculation returned. Anger had escaped. Now he had to build a report around it. A county unit turned onto the block, not city. County. Kelvin had called. Naomi had called. Maybe a neighbor had finally decided that watching was not enough. Deputy Heather Sloan stepped out of the county vehicle. For the first time, Blake did not look pleased to see another badge. Heather took in the scene fast. Isaiah beside his car, hands visible. Blake near him in plain clothes, breathing hard. Ronan behind the gate, phone on pavement. No visible injury, no immediate threat. "What happened?" Blake answered first. "He assaulted me." Isaiah said nothing. Heather looked at him. "Mr. Brooks?" The use of Mr. landed softly but sharply. Blake heard it. Ronan heard it. Isaiah heard it too. He spoke with care. "I remained on the public street. Officer Turner approached me. He made contact first. My phone is recording from the ground." Heather's gaze dropped to the phone. Blake said, "That is not going to show what happened." Heather replied, "Then it will not hurt to preserve it." Blake's jaw flexed. Ronan stepped forward. "I saw him grab the officer."
Heather turned her head.
"From behind the locked gate?" Ronan stopped. "Yes," he said after a beat. "From here." "And why were you here?" "Maintenance." "At 9 p.m.? "Emergency call." "From whom?" Ronan looked toward Blake. Heather saw it. So did Isaiah. No one moved for a moment. The night held them all in a narrow frame. The man accused, the officer exposed, the maintenance worker caught between stories, the deputy deciding whether to protect the system or record a fact. Heather picked up Isaiah's phone, using a clean glove from her pocket. She did not stop the recording. She placed it on the hood of Isaiah's car, camera facing upward, and asked Blake for his statement. Blake went calm again. He said he had been leaving a security consultation at Harbour Pines when he observed Isaiah parked suspiciously across from the property. He said Isaiah had been warned not to return. He said Isaiah became aggressive when approached. He said Isaiah grabbed his wrist, and Blake disengaged to avoid escalation. It was a good lie because parts of it touched truth. Isaiah had been parked there. Blake had approached. Isaiah had touched his wrist. But the center was rotten. Heather asked Ronan for the maintenance call information. Ronan said the work order was in the system. Heather asked him to produce it. He said the system was down. The phrase was becoming a family trait at Harbour Pines. Heather asked Blake whether he was on duty. Blake said no. She asked why he was conducting a security consultation in plain clothes without a visible case assignment. Blake said Harbour Pines had requested extra attention due to recent incidents. Heather wrote that down. Then she asked whether any city unit had been dispatched. Blake said no. Heather looked at Isaiah. "Do you need medical attention?" "No." Blake laughed once. "He is fine." Heather did not look at him. "I asked him." That was not justice. It was not even protection. It was simply a sentence placed in the right direction. Sometimes that is the first sign a room has begun to tilt. Heather gave Isaiah an incident card and told him she would document the contact. She did not arrest Blake. She did not accuse Ronan. She did not declare the truth on a public street. Real life did not turn that fast. But she did tell Ronan not to alter or delete any work order records from that evening, and she said it loudly enough for the phone to catch. Ronan's face went pale. Blake walked back through the gate without another word. Before leaving, Heather leaned slightly toward Isaiah, keeping her voice low. "Send that recording to your attorney tonight." "I will." "And do not come back here alone." He almost asked whether that was advice or instruction. He decided not to give her another sentence to explain. At home, he emailed the file to Theo Bennett at 10:38 p.m. Theo replied 4 minutes later. "Do not respond to anyone tonight. Back up the original. I am sending a preservation supplement before morning. Then a second message came. Also, the audio captured Turner saying, "That is your second mistake." That helps. Helps. The word felt too small for what it cost. Isaiah slept for 2 hours, woke before sunrise, and found another email from Theo. Subject: Bodycam request response. The city had produced partial footage from the night of the arrest, not full, partial. The file began after Blake's hand was already near Isaiah's pocket. It showed Isaiah with hands on the car. It showed Blake removing the bag. It showed Carter standing behind him. It included Amber's gasp. It included Isaiah saying, "That did not come from my pocket." It included Carter saying, "Subject claims item was planted." It did not include the first approach, the question about detention, the first pat-down, or the moment Blake turned his shoulder camera away. Theo's email contained one sentence in capital letters. "Where are the first 10 minutes?" Isaiah watched the footage 3 times without sound, then twice with sound. Video has a way of pretending to be complete because it shows something, but a missing beginning can lie as efficiently as a false ending. The clip made Blake look decisive. It made Carter look observant. It made Amber look concerned. It made Isaiah look trapped in a story that had started before the viewer arrived. At 7:15 am, Theo called. "They are claiming the buffer failed." What does that mean? It means they are saying the camera did not save the earlier segment. Does that happen? It can. Conveniently, it happens most often when the missing segment matters. Theo's voice sharpened. "I am filing a formal complaint with Internal Affairs and copying the city attorney. I am also asking for the audit log, not just footage. Cameras create metadata, activation, upload, download, edits, access. If someone touched the file, there may be a trail." Maybe. Yes, maybe. That is the word lawyers use when the floor is rotten but has not collapsed yet. At 9 am, Fiona called Isaiah back to work. Not routes. Inventory. "You will be inside for now," she said. "I reviewed what I can review. The allegation is not enough for me to terminate you." "Thank you. Do not thank me for doing the minimum." It was the closest thing to warmth she allowed. Inventory work paid less in tips and carried more stares. People in the supply room pretended not to know. Then they pretended too hard. One man, Blake's cousin by rumor or coincidence, muttered that some people brought trouble everywhere. Isaiah heard it, marked the voice, and kept counting boxes. High point, low point, high point. That was how pressure kept its rhythm. It gave back a little air, then took more. The next taking came from Amber. Her attorney sent Theo a letter alleging Isaiah had engaged in harassment, surveillance, and reputational harm against Harbour Pines. The letter accused him of interfering with residential safety operations and warned that the property would pursue all available remedies if he continued to appear near the premises. Theo read it aloud over the phone with open disgust, carefully wrapped in professional tone. "They are trying to convert your evidence gathering into intimidation." "I was on a public sidewalk." "I know. They know. The letter is not written for truth. It is written for later." "Later what?" "Later, they show a judge or a hearing panel that they warned you. Later, they argue any continued contact was malicious. Later, they make you look obsessed." Isaiah stood in the stockroom aisle, one hand on a shelf of cleaning supplies. "So they plant drugs, then accuse me of damaging their reputation." "Exactly. This is nonsense, but it is structured nonsense." Theo caught himself breathing too hard and lowered his voice. "I am responding today. No threats, no drama, just facts and preservation demands. That afternoon, Grace Holloway from Internal Affairs entered the story. Her first call was dry enough to sound unfriendly. "Mr. Brooks, this is Investigator Holloway. I have been assigned to conduct a preliminary review of your complaint involving Officer Turner and Officer Knox." "Preliminary review?" he repeated. "Yes, that is not a disciplinary finding. It is not a criminal investigation. It is an initial administrative step." "I understand. Do you have counsel?" "Yes." "Then I will coordinate formal interviews through counsel. For now, I need to confirm whether you are alleging the suspected narcotics were placed on your person by Officer Turner." Isaiah looked across the stockroom. A co-worker was pretending not to listen near the loading door. "I am alleging the item recovered from my left jacket pocket did not originate from me, and that Officer Turner's hand movement before recovery requires review against the full video, the audit log, and the evidence seal record." Silence. Then Grace said, "That is a careful answer. It is the answer I can support." Another pause. "Send all documents through your attorney." She ended the call without reassurance. Isaiah preferred that. Reassurance was cheap. Procedure, if it held, was better. But procedure had enemies. Ronan Hayes tried the technical door first. A new access log appeared in Harbour Pines records after Theo's preservation letter. It showed Ronan opening the maintenance shed at 6:52 p.m., not 7:03 p.m., and listed the purpose as bulb replacement. It also showed no access at 2:12 p.m. during the camera outage because, according to the log, the system had been offline. Theo forwarded it with 3 words. They backfilled this. Isaiah compared the log to Kelvin's photograph and Naomi's call history. Ronan's listed time did not match. Blake's presence did not match. The camera outage did not match the posted notice. Each mismatch was small enough to excuse alone. Together, they began to form a pattern. Then, Carter Knox tried the legal door. His second supplemental report referenced Isaiah's knowledge of procedural language as suspicious, suggesting he had attempted to exploit technicalities to avoid lawful detention. Carter did not write that Isaiah had rights. He wrote as if knowing rights was behavior. That sentence enraged Theo more than anything else. "He is making literacy sound like probable cause." Isaiah said, "Can that stand?" "It can sit in a file. Standing is what we challenge later." Later. Again. The word that made justice feel like a hallway with no end. Blake tried the physical door once more, but indirectly. A black SUV followed Isaiah from work for 6 blocks, never close enough to force a stop, never far enough to dismiss. Isaiah drove normally. He did not speed. He did not lead it home. He turned into the parking lot of a grocery store with exterior cameras, parked near the entrance, and waited. The SUV stopped across the lot. Isaiah bought a bottle of water, kept the receipt, and left through the front entrance where 2 cameras covered the doors. The SUV was gone when he came out. That evening, the brick-throwing case was marked inactive, pending new leads. Naomi called that phrase fancy sleeping. Isaiah wrote it down anyway. By the end of the week, the first real crack opened from a place none of them expected. Dispatch. Theo received the 911 audio and CAD notes from the night of the arrest. The call was shorter than Amber's later statements made it sound. The dispatcher's name was Carla Mendez. The call duration was 1 minute and 48 seconds. The caller did not report Isaiah touching cars. She said he was near the vehicles. She did not say he was threatening anyone. She said she felt uneasy. When asked if he had been told to leave, she said, "Not yet, but he knows he should not be there." Not yet. Theo played that part twice. There it was, in Amber's own voice, before Blake arrived. No order to leave, no refusal, no trespass warning, just expectation. Just unease. Just the belief that Isaiah should read a boundary no one had actually given him and be punished for failing to obey it. Theo prepared a short transcript. Dispatch ID Harbour 761, date Thursday. Time 8:46 p.m. Dispatcher Carla Mendez. Caller Amber Whitmore. Key excerpt. Caller states subject has not yet been told to leave. He sent it to Grace Holloway. Grace did not respond for 6 hours. When she did, she asked for the original audio file, not the transcript. That was a good sign. Maybe. It meant she wanted evidence, not argument. It also meant she was moving carefully enough that no one could accuse her of taking Isaiah's side. The second crack came from a body camera timestamp. The partial footage began at 8:56 p.m. and 32 seconds. Blake's report said he initiated contact at 8:55 p.m. Carter's supplemental said the pat-down occurred immediately upon officer safety concerns, but the CAD log showed Blake had marked himself on scene at 8:52 p.m. 4 minutes missing on paper, 10 minutes missing on video, 1 hour wrong on an evidence seal. Grace requested the department's server audit. The request did not make people confess, it made them coordinate. Carter and Blake submitted clarifying statements within 24 hours. Carter wrote that times in field reports were approximate. Blake wrote that his body camera had activated late due to a manual error under dynamic conditions. Both mentioned officer safety. Both mentioned Isaiah's argumentative posture. Both used the phrase rapidly evolving situation. Theo read the statements and gave a humorless laugh. They talked before writing. Can we prove that? Not yet. Then it is a note, not a fact. Theo paused. You keep saying things like that. Isaiah did not respond. Theo moved on. The identical phrase matters. It does not prove coordination by itself, but it gives us a deposition question later. Later was starting to gather teeth, but Amber refused to fade into the background. She organized a resident safety meeting in the Harbour Pines clubhouse. She did not name Isaiah in the flyer. She did not mention drugs. She wrote about trespassing, loitering, and protecting vulnerable residents. Naomi received the flyer under her door and called Isaiah with outrage so sharp he held the phone away from his ear. She is using me to scare people into thanking her. Do not go. I was not asking permission. Naomi, I said I was not asking. That night, Naomi attended with Jasper Cole and 3 other residents who had signed the hallway light complaint. Isaiah stayed home. Theo approved that decision so strongly he sent a thumbs up in words, because Isaiah did not use symbols in messages. Naomi recorded audio openly from her purse after announcing to the room that she was recording for her own notes. Amber looked displeased, but did not stop her. The meeting began with Amber thanking residents for their vigilance. Then she said something that would become another receipt. We cannot wait for something terrible to happen before we trust our concerns. A resident asked whether the man arrested had actually been warned before police came. Amber replied, management had made our expectations clear. Jasper asked, is that a yes? Amber said, it is not appropriate to discuss an active matter. Then Blake Turner spoke from the back of the room. He was off duty, according to the department later. Uninvited, according to Amber later. Present as a concerned community liaison, according to his own memo later. At the time, he stood with arms folded and gave the room that soft voice. People like to twist technical words after the fact, but safe communities do not get built by letting outsiders test your fences. Naomi's recording caught the sentence cleanly.
People like to twist technical words.
Outsiders. Your fences. He did not say race. He did not need to. Language has side doors. Naomi stood. Her voice shook, but age had not taken its edge. That man brought me groceries. Blake answered too quickly. And a little extra, according to the evidence. A few residents murmured. Amber lowered her eyes, but not before satisfaction crossed her face. Naomi left before she said something they could use.
The recording went to Theo.
Theo sent it to Grace. Grace replied with a formal acknowledgement and nothing more. The next morning, Blake filed a memo stating he had attended the safety meeting at the request of residents and had made no comment about the pending case beyond general safety guidance. Naomi's audio said otherwise. That was when Grace Holloway requested an in-person interview with Isaiah, with Theo present. They met in a small municipal conference room with beige walls and a clock that ticked too loudly. Grace sat across from Isaiah. Theo sat beside him with a legal pad and a pen that had been chewed to the plastic. A city HR representative sat at the end of the table and said nothing except to introduce herself. Grace began with a warning about the administrative nature of the interview. She explained that the review could result in no finding, sustained findings, policy recommendations, or referral to another agency if evidence supported it. She did not promise criminal charges. She did not promise discipline. She did not say justice. Then she asked Isaiah to walk through the night. He did. From the grocery store receipt to the open gate. From Amber's position to Carter's first note. From Blake's question to the unanswered detention inquiry. From the first pat-down to the second. From the pressure at the left pocket to the clear bag. From Carter's wording to the evidence seal. Grace interrupted only to clarify times. Theo interrupted once when the HR representative asked whether Isaiah had any prior drug involvement. Relevance? Grace looked at the HR representative, not Theo. We are not exploring character evidence, we are reviewing the incident. The HR representative closed her mouth. That moment did not heal anything, but it told Isaiah that Grace knew the shape of a side road and had blocked one. Then came the body cam. Grace played the partial clip on a laptop. No one spoke while it ran. Blake's hand, the bag, Amber's gasp, Isaiah's denial, Carter's sentence. The clip ended with Isaiah being cuffed. Grace asked, "What is missing?" Isaiah answered, "The beginning." What in the beginning matters most? The first pat-down found nothing. Theo's pen stopped moving. Grace looked up from her notes. Isaiah had not emphasized that before. He had mentioned it, yes, but now he placed it in the center. Grace asked, "You are certain?" "Yes." "How can you distinguish the first from the second?" "Tempo." The first was fast. Both outer jacket pockets, waistband, right side first. The second slowed at the left pocket after Officer Turner turned his shoulder. The bag appeared after that pause. Grace wrote for several seconds. Then she asked, "Why did you not pull away?" "Because I wanted to survive the report." The room went silent. It was not a dramatic sentence. He did not deliver it like one. That made it worse. The HR representative looked down. Theo's jaw tightened. Grace kept writing, but slower. After the interview, Theo walked Isaiah to the parking lot. "That line will stay with her." "I was not trying to make a line." "I know. That is why it will." They stood beside Theo's old sedan, both tired in different ways. Theo said, "We are still far from clean." "I know."
They will say memory.
They will say stress. They will say camera malfunction. They will say the bag was there and your denial is expected. The system has words for everything. Isaiah looked toward the municipal building. So do we. Theo almost smiled. Yes, but ours need receipts. The receipts kept coming, not like a flood, but like drops through a ceiling no one could pretend was dry forever. First, Kelvin found the grocery store security manager willing to preserve footage of Isaiah buying eggs and batteries at 8:34 p.m. That footage mattered because Carter's report suggested Isaiah had been lingering at Harbour Pines for an extended period before the call. He could not have been both buying eggs across town and loitering near Building C for the time they implied. Second, Jasper Cole provided a written statement that the East Gate was propped open with a landscaping brick at 8:40 p.m. when he took out trash. That mattered because Amber's statement described a secured property breached by an unauthorized person. Third, Naomi produced her call log, showing she invited Isaiah at 8:28 p.m. and texted, "Door will be unlocked for you because hall light out again." That mattered because invitation was not a minor detail in a trespass story. Fourth, the posted camera maintenance notice had no vendor identification, and a resident named Lily Grant found a photo from earlier that day showing no such notice at 12:30 p.m. That mattered because the notice appeared after Theo's preservation demand. Finally, the evidence seal log came back. Not fully, not cleanly, but enough. Grace received it from the department property system, then sent a controlled excerpt through official channels. Theo read the excerpt aloud to Isaiah over the phone. Evidence seal strip sequence issued to Officer Blake Turner at 7:49 p.m. Logged by property technician A. Moore. Purpose field blank. Seal no ending 462. Assigned before incident HP 4419. Created in record system. Theo stopped. Isaiah did not speak.
Theo continued, more quietly.
The seal predates the incident record. There it was. The first hard thing that did not depend on Isaiah's memory. It did not prove every piece. Blake could say he grabbed extra seal strips earlier. The blank purpose field could be called a clerical issue. The department could argue officers often carry supplies before calls. Carter could say he did not notice. Amber could say she knew nothing about evidence handling. But the story they wrote had acquired a weight it could not carry. Theo sent a formal supplement to Internal Affairs. He cited the seal log, the dispatch call, Naomi's invitation, the missing Bodycam segment, the leasing office camera outage, and the maintenance access questions. He used careful language again. Inconsistent, potentially material, requires preservation, may implicate evidence handling rules. He did not write that Blake planted drugs. He made the documents walk everyone toward that door. The reaction came fast. Blake's union representative notified the department that Blake would not submit to any further informal questioning without representation. Carter amended his availability due to previously scheduled leave. Amber's attorney denied spoliation and claimed the camera outage was routine. Ronan stopped answering calls from residents and took 3 days off for a family matter. Heather Sloan called Theo, not Isaiah, to say the county incident from the street confrontation would be forwarded to Grace as potentially related. That mattered more than her tone suggested, because it tied Blake's later conduct to the earlier arrest. It showed contact outside normal duty. It showed Ronan present again. It showed Isaiah avoiding entry onto the property while still being approached. It cut at the stalking narrative Amber's attorney had tried to build. For the first time, the structure around Isaiah shifted from accusation to contested record. But shifting is not falling. The charge still existed. The notice to appear still sat on Isaiah's table. His job still had him in inventory. Naomi still walked a dark hallway because maintenance had replaced the bulb twice, and the circuit still failed. Amber still signed emails as community manager. Blake still had his badge. Carter still wrote reports. Ronan still had keys. That was the emotional cruelty of partial proof. It made innocence visible without making it safe. On Friday evening, Isaiah sat with Naomi at her kitchen table, the same table where she had first read the group chat messages. She poured tea, neither of them drank. "You are close," she said. "To what?" "To making them admit it." Isaiah shook his head. "They may never admit it." "Then what is the point?" He looked at the window above her sink. The glass reflected both of them faintly. Naomi small and fierce, Isaiah tired and still. "The point is making denial expensive." She sat with that. Outside, footsteps passed in the hallway, then paused. Naomi and Isaiah both looked toward the door. A folded envelope slid underneath. Isaiah rose first. He did not touch it bare-handed. Naomi muttered that she was tired of living like evidence was contagious, but she handed him kitchen tongs anyway. Inside the envelope was one printed page. No signature, no return address, a screenshot of an email chain. Most of it was blacked out. Sender names, recipients, attachments, half the subject line. But 3 lines remained visible. Thursday, 7:18 p.m. Need the outside mail moved before the other delivery comes through. Do not use the front gate log. Below that, a reply. At 7:21 p.m. BT says he can make it a trespass if AW confirms prior concern. Naomi read it twice. "BT," she whispered. Isaiah did not say Blake Turner. "A W," she said. He did not say Amber Whitmore. The third line was worse because it did not use initials. Ronan has the strip. The room seemed to shrink around the paper. Naomi's hand went to the back of her chair. Strip? Isaiah was already looking at the evidence seal excerpt on his phone, at the ending digits, at the time issued, at the blank purpose field. The anonymous page might be fake. It might be a trap. It might be bait designed to make him overreach. But if it was real, it named coordination before the arrest. It named a delivery. It named the gate log. It named the seal strip. He photographed the page. He bagged it. He called Theo. Theo answered on the second ring, and Isaiah could hear traffic behind him. "I need you to listen before you react." That is never a comforting opening. Isaiah read the visible lines exactly. No guesses, no names expanded, no accusations beyond the text. Theo went silent so long, Isaiah checked the call. Finally, Theo said, "Do not send it by regular email. Photograph the envelope, the page, where it came under the door, and keep the original flat. I am coming to you." Naomi leaned close enough to hear. "Tell him to drive faster." Theo heard her. "Mrs. Ellis, I am already violating my blood pressure." She almost smiled. The smile did not last, because while they waited, Isaiah checked the hallway. The light flickered once, then died again. Down by the stairwell, the utility closet door was open a few inches. He did not approach it. He called building security. No answer. He called the county non-emergency line and reported a suspicious open utility door in Building C, connected to an active complaint and potential evidence issue. He used careful words. He stayed inside Naomi's apartment. He did not give anyone a hallway confrontation. Theo arrived 28 minutes later, breathing hard, tie loosened, hair wind-blown. He examined the envelope without touching it directly and took his own photographs. Then he read the page. The color left his face in stages.
This is either the best break we have
Or the dirtiest trap they have set. How do we treat it? As both. Theo called Grace Holloway. Not her office, her after-hours line, which she had given him for urgent evidence preservation issues and probably regretted immediately.
He summarized the anonymous page.
The open utility closet, the prior camera outage, the seal log discrepancy, and the concern that records could be altered or removed. He did not demand arrests. He did not make speeches. He asked for documented preservation and an independent response. Grace listened. Then she said she would contact a supervisor and request that no Harbour Pines staff access the relevant utility areas until county personnel arrived. Naomi whispered, "About time,"
but time
again stretched. County deputies arrived first, not Heather, 2 others. They secured the hallway and checked the utility closet. It contained electrical panels, spare bulbs, cleaning supplies, and a locked metal cabinet marked property maintenance. Ronan had keys, Amber had keys, the vendor had keys. Half the system had keys, which meant any one person could blame the air. Then Heather arrived, hair pulled back, face unreadable.
she saw Isaiah inside Naomi's doorway and said,
"You stayed put." I listened. "That makes one of us tonight," Theo muttered. Heather looked at him. He raised a hand. Professional frustration, not obstruction. She ignored that and examined the envelope photographs. She did not take the original from Theo. She documented receipt of information and told him a formal evidence transfer would need to be arranged. That was procedure. Slow, annoying, necessary.
At 11:40 p.m.,
Grace Holloway arrived in plain clothes with an evidence technician from the city who looked unhappy to be there. Grace did not enter Naomi's apartment until Theo confirmed Isaiah consented to her seeing the page in place. She photographed it. She noted the time. She asked who had touched it. She asked whether the hallway camera worked. Naomi laughed once, sharply. Which answer would embarrass them less? Grace did not smile. The accurate one.
"No," Naomi said. "It does not work."
Grace wrote that down. The anonymous page did not explode the case open that night. It did not lead to sirens. It did not drag Blake from his house. It became one more item in a chain that had to be authenticated, challenged, compared, and defended against claims of fabrication. Still, when Grace finished, she asked Theo to step into the hallway. Isaiah could not hear all of it. He heard enough.
Grace said,
The department server produced an audit anomaly. Theo said, "Define anomaly." Grace said, "Not in the hallway." Theo's posture changed. They moved to the stairwell landing. Isaiah stayed where he was because he had promised himself not to chase every door. Naomi, however, had no such promise and stood close enough to catch fragments when voices rose. Upload gap, manual export, user credential. Not Turner, not Knox. Theo returned 10 minutes later with his face arranged into lawyer calm. It did not fit. "What did she say?" Isaiah asked. Theo glanced toward Grace, then back. "She cannot disclose details yet." "That is not what I asked." Theo lowered his voice. "There may be server activity tied to someone outside the 2 offices." "Ronan?" She did not say. "Amber?" She did not say. Naomi gripped the back of her chair. Then who? Theo looked at the anonymous page, sealed inside a temporary evidence sleeve. That is the problem. Grace returned to the doorway. Her eyes moved from Theo to Isaiah. Mr. Brooks, I'm going to ask you not to discuss this document with anyone beyond counsel. I understand. Not Mrs. Ellis's neighbors, not your employer, no public statements. I understand. She paused. And preserve any unknown calls, texts, mail, or contact attempts. That instruction landed heavier than the rest. Isaiah asked, Do you expect more? Grace looked down the dark hallway before answering. I expect people to protect themselves. No one slept much after that. The next morning brought rain, thick and grey, tapping against Naomi's window and Isaiah's patched plastic at the duplex. Theo filed another preservation supplement, this one referencing the anonymous document as unverified but potentially material. He requested all emails and messages involving Amber Whitmore, Blake Turner, Carter Knox, Ronan Hayes, Building C, trespass, gate logs, delivery, and evidence seal inventory for the 48 hours surrounding the arrest. He also warned Isaiah that the more serious the evidence became, the more careful they had to be. Do not get ahead of authentication, he said. A fake document can poison a good case. And a real one? A real one can still be called fake for months. Months. That was where part one of the fight truly settled into Isaiah's bones. Not in the arrest, not in the shove, not even in the planted bag. It was the understanding that truth was not a door you kicked open. It was a load you carried through rooms designed to tire your arms. By noon, Fiona restored Isaiah to limited delivery routes, not because the case was resolved, but because the anonymous complaint to his employer could not be verified, and because, in her words, a public accusation is not a personnel policy. That sentence helped more than she knew. His first delivery took him past Harbour Pines, but not inside it. He drove the speed limit. He did not look toward the gate. Still, as he passed, he saw Amber, standing under the leasing office awning, phone pressed to her ear, watching him with a face stripped of its polite mask. For once, she looked afraid. Fear did not make her kinder. It made her sharper. That evening, a final resident email went out before the city advised Harbour Pines to stop public commentary.
Dear residents,
Recent outside interference has created confusion about our safety procedures. Management remains committed to protecting this community from unauthorized individuals and false narratives. False narratives? Isaiah read the email, then placed it with the others. Keys on the left, phone on the right, papers aligned. At 9:18 p.m., Theo forwarded a message from Grace Holloway. It contained no full report, no conclusion, no dramatic declaration, only a notice that the Internal Affairs Preliminary Review had been expanded to include evidence handling, body camera preservation, off-duty contact, and potential coordination with non-department personnel. Expanded. That word did not clear Isaiah's name. It did not stop Blake from sleeping in his own bed. It did not turn Amber's emails into confessions or Carter's reports into charges. It did not explain Ronan's access. It did not restore the missing 10 minutes. But it meant the official story was no longer the only story in the file. Theo called a minute later. Grace received the full Bodycam file from the department server. Isaiah stood very still. Full? That is what she said. Did she watch it? She started to. Rain tapped the window. On Isaiah's table, the papers waited in their squared stacks, each one thin alone, heavier together. Theo's voice changed. She stopped after hearing something near the beginning. What?
She would not quote it over the phone.
Isaiah closed his eyes once, then opened them. Theo continued, quieter now. But she asked me a question I do not think she meant to say aloud. The line hissed softly between them. She asked, "Why is federal evidence tape on a county bag?"
Legal references and guardrails used for this script
Were checked against the uploaded instruction file and current statute sources. Florida trespass on property other than a structure or conveyance, Florida tampering or fabricating physical evidence, federal deprivation of rights under color of law, and federal falsification of records provisions. She asked, "Why is federal evidence tape on a county bag?" For several seconds, Isaiah did not answer Theo. Rain pressed against the patched window at his duplex, and every drop seemed to land in the space between what he could say and what he had promised not to say. The question had finally reached the place he had kept locked, not because he wanted drama, not because he enjoyed letting people doubt him, but because one careless sentence could have collapsed months of work and exposed people who did not have Blake Turner's uniform to protect them. Theo knew enough to hear the silence. His voice lowered. He asked whether there was anything he needed to know before he walked into the next meeting, blind. Isaiah looked at the stacks of paper on the table, at Amber's emails, Carter's reports, Naomi's call log, the anonymous page sealed flat between two clean folders. Then he looked at the grocery receipt from the night Blake had called him kid, and decided he did not belong. He told Theo there was, but not over the phone. By the next morning, the case had changed shape without changing its public face. Blake still appeared on the schedule, though only for desk duty. Carter's name remained on active reports. Amber sent no more community emails, yet her office blinds stayed closed, and residents saw Ronan carrying boxes from the maintenance shed into his truck before sunrise. No one was arrested, no one confessed. No official statement admitted that a man had been stopped without a clean basis, searched through a performance of suspicion, and written into a drug case with a bag that did not belong to him. That was how institutions breathed under pressure. They did not roar. They sealed doors, adjusted language, and waited to see who would tire first. Grace Holloway did not wait. She scheduled a formal internal affairs disciplinary hearing for the following week, careful to call it administrative and preliminary, careful to remind everyone that it was not a criminal trial and not a final finding. The notice listed evidence handling, body camera preservation, off-duty contact, report accuracy, and coordination with non-department personnel as matters under review. It named Blake Turner and Carter Knox directly. It named Ronan Hayes and Amber Whitmore as civilian witnesses. It did not name Isaiah as anything but complainant. That last word did not fit him, but he let it stand. Before the hearing, Theo met Isaiah in a windowless conference room at the federal building downtown. Theo arrived carrying 2 legal pads, 3 printed binders, and the face of a man who had slept badly for professional reasons. He stopped at the doorway when he saw Ivy Marshall seated beside Isaiah. Ivy wore a navy jacket, and no expression wasted on comfort. She had called Isaiah Mr. Brooks from the beginning, because that was what the cover required. But the respect in her tone had never belonged to a neighbor or a casual witness. Theo understood that before anyone said a word. Ivy placed a folder on the table and explained the boundaries. Certain operational details would remain sealed. Certain names would be redacted. Certain investigative techniques would not be described in public. But the minimum necessary facts could now be disclosed to internal affairs, the city attorney, and, if referred, the appropriate federal authority. Isaiah had been operating under federal direction in an ongoing narcotics and public corruption investigation tied to Harbour Pines. He was not there as a trespasser, not as a random visitor, not as a man wandering where he had no reason to be. He was there because deliveries had been moving through the property after hours, and because someone with access to gates, maintenance spaces, and local police contacts appeared to be protecting the route.
Theo did not interrupt.
He only put his pen down slowly.
Ivy continued.
The federal evidence tape mattered because one controlled package, prepared under chain of custody in the operation, had gone missing from a temporary transfer kit before the night Isaiah was arrested. The tape on Blake's county evidence bag matched a strip issued in that controlled operation, not a strip normally available to Harbour Pines staff or city officers. That did not prove by itself who took it. It did prove the county-style bag had been dressed with federal material it should not have had. For the first time since taking the case, Theo looked less angry than cold. He asked whether Isaiah was an FBI agent. Isaiah answered yes. There was no swelling music in the room, no triumphant turn, no badge slapped on a table. Just a quiet confirmation, a folder opened, and a truth that had been dangerous before it became useful. Theo leaned back, closed his eyes for one breath, then opened them with the expression of a lawyer rearranging every fact he thought he knew. He said Blake had not planted drugs on the wrong man. Blake had planted drugs on the one man who could prove where they came from. Ivy corrected him with care. Blake had allegedly recovered and submitted evidence that did not originate from Isaiah, and the determination of intent would require a full inquiry. Theo gave her a thin look and said that was exactly why federal people were exhausting. Isaiah almost smiled, but the moment passed before it could become light. The hearing began 2 days later in a municipal building that smelled of old carpet and coffee burned onto a warmer. A panel of 3 sat at the front: a deputy city manager, a retired police commander from another jurisdiction, and a labor relations attorney. Grace Holloway presented the administrative file. Blake sat with a union representative. Carter sat with his own counsel, hands folded, face pale but controlled. Amber wore a grey suit and the expression of someone offended by being required to explain herself. Ronan looked at the table as if the wood grain had instructions hidden in it. Heather Sloane sat near the wall, present as a county witness. Naomi came with Jasper and Kelvin, though Theo had warned her twice not to speak unless called. The proceeding did not move fast. Real accountability rarely does. First came opening statements, each careful enough to leave room for retreat. Blake's representative said the officer had responded to a legitimate trespass concern, recovered suspected narcotics, and acted within officer safety principles under rapidly evolving conditions. Carter's counsel said report timing discrepancies were normal under field pressure. Amber's attorney said Harbour Pines had acted in good faith based on resident complaints. Ronan's attorney said his client handled maintenance records, not police evidence, and had no knowledge of any planted item. Theo did not make a speech about good and evil. He spoke for Isaiah in measured language. He said the issue was not whether private property could enforce rules, but whether officials and civilians had manufactured facts after deciding a black man did not belong. He said the record contained inconsistencies too specific to dismiss as clerical error. He said the question before the panel was not heroism, it was preservation, accuracy, and whether a department could trust reports written around missing video and impossible evidence tape. Then Grace began reading the receipts. The first was the 911 call summary. Thursday evening, 8:46 p.m., dispatch ID, Harbor 761, dispatcher Carla Mendez, caller Amber Whitmore. No weapon reported, no direct contact, caller acknowledged. Isaiah had not yet been told to leave. Amber looked down when her own voice played, especially at the line where she said, "He knew he should not be there." The retired commander wrote something then, underlined it, and did not look up for almost a minute. The second receipt was Naomi's invitation and call log. It established why Isaiah came to Building C, what he brought, and when he arrived. The groceries were not dramatic evidence, but the receipt from the store, the preserved footage, and Naomi's text cut through Carter's phrase about loitering. Isaiah had not been drifting. He had been invited. The third receipt was the body camera timeline. Grace did not show the full video immediately. She first read the metadata. Blake marked on scene at 8:52 p.m. Incident file created later. Partial footage began at 8:56 p.m. and 32 seconds. Server audit showed a manual export under a credential not assigned to Blake or Carter. The original retained a buffer segment that had not been produced in the first response. Carter's attorney objected to the characterization of the export as suspicious. The panel chair told Grace to rephrase. Grace did. She said the export was unexplained and material to the review. That was enough. Then she played the beginning. The room changed when everyone heard Blake's first sentence in full. "You keep breathing like you belong here, kid, and I'll write the reason you don't."
Naomi closed her eyes.
Heather Sloane's jaw tightened. Amber stared straight ahead. Blake did not move, but color rose slowly along his neck.
The video continued.
It showed Isaiah asking whether he was being detained. It showed Blake refusing to answer. It showed Carter writing before any clear refusal occurred. It showed the first pat-down, fast and empty. It showed Blake turning his shoulder camera away. It showed the second pass. It showed the pause at the left pocket. It showed the bag appear. It did not show Blake placing the bag inside the pocket. The angle was not perfect enough for that. Real evidence is often less clean than the people watching it want. But it showed enough to make Blake's version wobble. It showed enough to make Carter's report look engineered. It showed enough to make Amber's gasp sound less like fear and more like a cue. Grace stopped the video and read from the evidence seal log. The seal number 462 had been issued before the incident record existed. The purpose field was blank. The same seal series appeared in a federal-controlled evidence inventory associated with an operation whose name was withheld on the public administrative record. At that point, Ivy Marshall stood. She did not announce herself with theater. She provided credentials to the panel, the city attorney, and the hearing officer. Then, she read a limited declaration from the federal case file, stating that Isaiah Brooks was a federal law enforcement officer acting under authorized cover at the time of the Harbor Pines incident, and that certain evidence materials connected to the operation had been improperly diverted before appearing in a county-style evidence submission. Blake's representative asked for a recess. The panel granted 15 minutes. No one spoke in the hallway at first. Amber's attorney pulled her into a corner and whispered with controlled fury. Ronan sat alone on a bench, bouncing one knee until his lawyer put a hand on it. Carter stared at a vending machine without buying anything. Blake made one call, short and tense, then turned away when he saw Heather watching.
Naomi walked up to Isaiah.
She did not hug him. She knew better in that building, in that hour. She only touched 2 fingers to his sleeve and said she had known he was carrying something heavy, but not that heavy. Isaiah told her he was sorry she had been pulled into it. She looked at him as if he had insulted both her age and her intelligence. She said she had been pulled into it the moment they decided her friend looked disposable.
When the hearing resumed,
The tone had changed from defensive confidence to damage control. Blake's union representative argued that the revelation of Isaiah's role complicated the officer's perception at the scene, and that Blake could not have known who Isaiah was. Theo did not dispute that Blake lacked knowledge of Isaiah's true position. He said that was exactly the point. Blake had behaved that way because he believed Isaiah was ordinary, isolated, and easy to write over. Carter's attorney tried to separate report language from physical evidence. He said Carter did not recover the bag and relied on Blake's observations. Grace then read Carter's field notes, including the line, "Subject claims item was planted," written before Isaiah used that phrase. She read the later phrase, "bladed stance," then played the video of Isaiah placing both hands on the car. Carter swallowed hard, but did not look up. Amber claimed she had called because residents were worried. Grace read her email from 7:18 p.m., the one recovered from a backup server after the anonymous printout led investigators to search for it. Need the outside mail moved before the other delivery comes through. Most recipient names were redacted in the hearing copy, but Amber's name was not. She said she did not remember writing it. Her attorney touched her wrist under the table, a silent warning to stop. Ronan's turn was shorter and worse. The access log showed his credential opening the maintenance shed before Blake arrived. His work order for emergency lighting had been created after Theo's preservation letter, not before. The system outage entry had been backdated. When asked who told him to avoid the front gate log, Ronan looked at his attorney, then said he wanted to invoke his rights and would not answer without advice connected to possible criminal exposure. That sentence did not prove guilt. But it was the first time anyone in the room admitted the matter had moved beyond discipline. The panel did not issue a final decision that day. It recessed pending supplemental review, referral, and labor process requirements. Blake was placed on paid administrative leave before the sun set. Carter was assigned restricted duty with no field reporting authority. Ronan was suspended by Harbour Pines pending internal review. Amber was placed on administrative leave by the property company, which released a statement about cooperation, safety, and confidence in its processes. The statement did not contain Isaiah's name. It did not contain the word sorry. 2 weeks later, the state attorney declined to file the possession charge against Isaiah, citing evidentiary integrity concerns. That phrase was dry enough to hide an ocean. It meant the case built against him could not stand, but it did not mean everyone who built it would be punished. Theo told him to take the win and distrust how small it felt. Isaiah did both. The federal side moved slower. A referral went to the Department of Justice for review of possible deprivation of rights under color of law, under 18 United States Code, Section 242, possible false statements or record falsification under federal provisions, and possible state evidence tampering issues. No one promised charges. Ivy made that plain. Criminal prosecution required proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and bad conduct did not always become a charge that survived court. Blake's intent would be contested. Carter's knowledge would be minimized. Amber would say she was protecting residents. Ronan would say he followed instructions he did not understand. Theo prepared the civil side under Section 1983, but he warned Isaiah that qualified immunity would be raised in any federal civil claim against the officers. It would not protect anyone from criminal review or administrative discipline, but it would be used to narrow the lawsuit and delay relief. Isaiah listened without surprise. By then, delay had become one of the antagonists. Months passed before the public saw anything that looked like consequence. Blake's paid leave became unpaid suspension after preliminary findings sustained violations for discourtesy, inaccurate reporting, failure to properly activate and preserve body camera footage, and evidence handling irregularities. The most serious allegations remained under external review. Carter received a written reprimand first, then a suspension, after the audit confirmed he had reviewed the missing video segment before writing his second supplemental report. He did not admit lying. He said his language had been imprecise. The department accepted that word for one finding and rejected it for another. Amber resigned from Harbor Pines before her employer completed its review. The company announced her departure as a personnel matter and thanked residents for patience during a difficult period. Ronan disappeared from the property roster and later entered a cooperation agreement connected to records tampering. The terms remained mostly sealed. Naomi called that convenient. Theo called it common. Both were right. The city settled Isaiah's civil claim 8 months after the arrest with no admission of wrongdoing. The amount was not life-changing after fees, taxes, and the cost of months spent defending his own name. But it paid for the broken window, the missed work, Naomi's new hallway lighting, and a security system at her door that she insisted she did not need while watching Kelvin install it carefully. The settlement required policy announcements. Harbor Pines agreed to revise visitor procedures, preserve security video after law enforcement contact, and prohibit management from circulating allegations about unnamed residents or guests while cases were pending. The police department announced retraining on trespass enforcement, body camera activation, and evidence handling. A city council member called it an important step. Theo muttered that steps are useful only if someone keeps walking. At the public session, where the reforms were announced, Isaiah sat in the third row beside Naomi. He did not speak during public comment. Naomi did. She walked to the microphone with a folder under one arm and no patience left for ceremonial language. She said she had lived long enough to know when a policy was written to calm a room instead of change behavior. She said the hallway light outside her apartment had been ignored until it became part of a federal file. She said calling a grown man kid was not a training issue when the rest of the sentence promised to write him out of belonging. The council chair thanked her for her comments. Naomi told him not to thank her unless he planned to read them. People shifted in their seats. A few clapped. Most looked uncomfortable, which was closer to useful than polite agreement. Heather Sloan found Isaiah afterward near the hallway outside council chambers. She had no grand apology ready. That too made it better. She said she had started from the wrong question when she asked why Blake would risk his career over him. Isaiah let the sentence sit. Then she said the better question was what Blake thought Isaiah lacked that made the risk seem small. Isaiah told her that was the question everyone should have started with. She nodded once. It was not friendship. It was not forgiveness. It was a correction placed where a mistake had been. Grace Holloway's final administrative summary arrived redacted so heavily it looked wounded. Whole paragraphs were blacked out under pending external review. Names became initials. Attachments were withheld. The missing 10 minutes were no longer missing, but the server export that hid them had been performed under a shared administrator credential, not a named user. The city said it could not determine who used the credential. Ivy did not believe that. Theo did not believe that. Isaiah read the line 3 times and placed it in a folder marked Unresolved. The Department of Justice opened a broader inquiry into patterns of trespass enforcement and evidence practices in the department. Not a full public reckoning, not overnight reform, not every bad actor dragged into light. A review, a monitor recommendation, interviews, data requests, officers complaining through their union that morale was suffering. City officials promising cooperation while asking how much cooperation would cost.
6 months after the settlement,
Harbour Pines looked almost normal again. New cameras watched the gates. New signs explained visitor procedure in plain language. The east gate no longer stayed propped open with a landscaping brick. The hallway outside Naomi's apartment shone bright enough that she complained it made the carpet look worse.
Isaiah still visited,
But he signed in every time. Not because Amber's old rules had been right, but because the paper trail belonged to him now too. Ronan's replacement printed guest passes without drama. Some residents avoided Isaiah's eyes, others nodded too warmly, as if kindness after proof could erase cowardice before it. Jasper always greeted him by name. Naomi always had something heavy ready for him to carry, even when she had placed it by the door herself, just to make him useful. One afternoon, Isaiah found a letter waiting at his duplex. No return address. Inside was a single page from the old Harbour Pines access system, printed before the software update. Most entries were familiar now. Ronan's maintenance credential, Amber's office credential, vendor access, gate tests. But one entry remained unaccounted for. Master 7 opened the utility room at 7:24 p.m. on the night of the arrest. Not Ronan, not Amber, not Blake, not Carter. Master 7 had appeared in no public report, no settlement exhibit, no hearing transcript Isaiah had been allowed to see. The credential had been disabled 2 days after the internal affairs hearing. The user field was blank. Isaiah photographed the page, bagged it, and called Ivy. She did not sound surprised, which told him more than any answer. That evening, he drove to Harbour Pines with Naomi's groceries on the passenger seat. Eggs, batteries, oranges, tea. Ordinary things, necessary things. At the gate, the new visitor system printed his name cleanly. The hallway light stayed on as he walked to Building C. Naomi opened the door before he knocked. She looked at the bag in his hand, then at his face. "You found another loose thread." Isaiah handed her the oranges. "One."
she stepped aside to let him in.
"Then I suppose the sweater is not finished coming apart." Outside, the hallway hummed with new light. Inside, on Isaiah's phone, the image of the Master 7 log waited to be sent through channels that would move too slowly and matter anyway. The system had not transformed. It had adjusted. It had protected itself, sacrificed what it had to, and kept parts of its shadow intact. But it no longer held the only pen, and somewhere, inside a redacted file, someone who had never been named had opened a door before Blake Turner ever called Isaiah Kid.